Welcome to Dynamics CRM 2011 Install and Customize Series, Segment 9, Configuration and Data Security. Hello, I'm Stephen No. I'm a consultant and senior trainer specializing in Dynamics CRM solutions. I've been working with Dynamics CRM since Release 3 was announced back in 2005. I'll be your guide for this segment. On our agenda, we'll start off with an overview of business units and how to configure them. Next, we'll move into role-based security and how security roles are used to manage security in CRM. Next up, user account overview and configuration of user accounts. That's followed by a team overview and configuration of teams. We'll move on to field-level security concepts and implementation of field-level security. Spend some time discussing data auditing, concepts, and implementation, and close with resources. The purpose of this segment is to make sure that you're able to configure and use business units to model an organization, to be able to maintain pre-existing security roles, as well as creating new security roles within a business structure. You'll also learn to create and maintain user accounts and manage user access to entities and tasks using security roles. You'll also be able to create and maintain teams to facilitate collaboration. You'll be able to implement field-level security, restrict access to highly sensitive data fields within an entity. And lastly, you'll be able to implement auditing to provide audit trails of changes to CRM data. CRM 2011 Configuration Business Units. Business units are a foundational part of CRM structure. It allows you to create a hierarchical tree structure that's used to model the corporate structure or divisions or departmental structure. It's a core component for security and reporting. Basically, business units allow you to segment CRM data and users based upon the department or division that they work in. So we can use this to group users, teams, facilities, equipment, and resource groups, and more importantly, security roles, which we'll cover in a later segment. When you're designing the structure, you really want to begin with an organization chart, and make sure you do a diagram before you attempt to create the complex structures. Every CRM organization has a root business unit. There's one and only one. It can never be deleted, disabled, or moved, but it can be renamed. And basically, it's the top level to the entire structure of any business units you create within the organization. Child business units can be created on demand. Every child business unit must have a parent. They can be deleted, disabled, or moved around within the structure. They can also be renamed. If you reparent a business unit, it changes the entire structure. So when a business unit is moved, its children move with it. When you deactivate a non-root business unit, it deactivates all the business units beneath it in the tree structure as well. And it prevents users who are assigned to that business unit from accessing CRM. It can be re-enabled at a later point. So for instance, you could create a new business unit, assign users to it, and then disable it to prevent access until you're ready for those users to log in. And finally, you can delete a non-root business unit, but you must reassign any associated records first. So now let's take a look at how managing business units really works within CRM 2011. Here we are in our demo environment, and we're going to work with business units. So first we go down and we select Settings and Administration. This takes us to the tab where we can now manage our business units. And as you see in this demonstration, there is a sales demo and a sales demo child business unit. So we'll start off by just the process of updating an existing business unit. So we're going to go ahead and change the name of sales demo. We're going to change it just to get rid of the space in between. But as you can see, I can put in a division name I'm not able to choose a parent business unit because this is the root, but I can put in all the other information that I might need, which comes very handy in templates and workflows later. So we save and close, and the change is made. So now let's create a new business unit from scratch. And save and close. So at this point, you'll notice that I created Sales Demo Grandchild, but it's being parented by the same as the Sales Demo Child. My actual intent was to create the grandchild to be the child of the child. So now I'm going to go back in and maintain it and move the structure of this. You'll notice that after I've created a business unit, that the lookup is grayed out. So I'm actually forced to go through this process where I change parent business and do the lookup. This gives me my choices. And at this point, now I have reparented the business unit. This basically will move with it all the users, any child business units, teams, and so on to the new structure that we've just created. So you want to keep that in mind. We now have a very narrow tree structure. We have the parent, we have the child, and we have the grandchild. One of the things that we can do is to delete a business unit. This is new in CRM 2011, so if you're maintaining organizations that were created prior to that, there might be some old business units that need cleaned up, and that was not possible before CRM 2011. That being said, there's also some restrictions on what we can do. If I want to delete the Sales Demo Child, which is in the middle of the structure, I can attempt to do so by clicking on the delete icon and attempt to do the delete. However, the business unit is not disabled, and furthermore, the business unit is containing a user as well as parenting another business unit, which would prevent it from working. At this point, first what I can do is go and disable the unit. You'll notice that it also took away from the structure of what was there and removed both of the business units. And this is because disabling a business unit will also disable those beneath it in the tree. So now to take a look at where they went, I can go to inactive business units in my view. I could go ahead and open this up and attempt to delete the business unit again. And this will delete the business units and records owned by the business units except for users, teams, and child business units. This business unit has both a child and a user, which means it will not permit me to delete. On the other hand, the grandchild has no users associated with it and no child business units. I can go ahead and perform a delete and have a reasonable assurance of success. While this takes a moment, it finally comes back and shows that I have the Sales Demo Child is still out there. So now what I'd like to do is enable this business unit. I can do so by coming to More Actions on the list menu and clicking Enable, or I can actually go into the record itself and go to the More Actions menu there. We'll go ahead and enable it from here and go back and take a look at our active business units. And now that I have enabled Sales Demo Child, this means that any users who are associated with this particular business unit, in this case Bob Emsley, will now be able to sign on. When this business unit was disabled, he was unable to log in to CRM. And that's about it. CRM 2011 Configuration, Security Roles and Role-Based Security. Role-Based Security Basics. The CRM security model protects data integrity and privacy, and it also supports efficient data access and collaboration. It's designed to provide users with access only to the appropriate levels of information that's required for them to do their jobs. It's also designed to categorize users by job role and restrict access based upon these roles. It also supports the concept of data sharing so that users and teams can be granted access to records that they do not own for a specified collaborative effort. And lastly, the security is designed to prevent a user from accessing information that they should not be in, including records that they do not own or share. That doesn't mean it's always set up that way, but we have the ability to configure security in a very granular manner. Role-based security design implications. Security is implemented so that a user must have privileges to something for it to be displayed within their user interface. For example, if a user has no privileges for a specific entity, it's hidden from their UI. It would not appear in their navigation pane on any CRM form, and it's also hidden from all views, forms, exports, advanced finds, and reports. Also, if a user is not granted access to a particular function, such as export to Excel or mail merge, the icons to access that function will not be displayed in their user interface. Finally, if a user does not have another privilege to a specific record in CRM, that the navigation to that option in menus and ribbons will be hidden or disabled. For example, if you do not grant delete privileges for records to a user, then the delete option will not appear in their user interface on the forms or views that they would access that data from. It's also important to remember that when you're designing reports, that the security model has a big impact upon what information is actually presented to the reports based upon who ran it. Users are only able to access the information that they're granted access to, and therefore a user with no access to a particular group of records would not be able to generate a report on that same group of records. So let's talk about the security components in role-based security. Let's start with privileges. Privileges are permission to perform an action in CRM, such as reading an account record or exporting to Excel. Access levels determine the records that a permission applies to. In other words, I have read capability on the account entity, but only to the records that I own or are owned by other users within my business unit. On the other hand, if we're just talking about a non-entity privilege, then access levels determine if you're allowed to do it at all. Are you allowed to export to Excel? Either none or all. There is no in between. Security roles actually group the privileges and access levels, and they're designed for a particular job or function so that we can group all privileges and access levels required to do a particular job into a security role, which then can be assigned to specific users who need to do that job. User ownership of entity records defines responsibility for the individual data records. For instance, a salesperson would own their own opportunities, but not own the opportunities of a coworker. The manager would be able to access these opportunity records for both of the people reporting to them, but the individual users might not be able to see each other's opportunities. Business unit hierarchy allows us to group users logically to support the access levels a little bit further. Therefore, I can choose to see all the records that might be owned by users within a particular business unit, or I might choose to create a role that's designed for a middle manager to be able to see all the records owned by any users that are subordinate to them in the business unit hierarchical structure. Security roles. As I just said, security roles aggregate privileges and access levels required for a particular job function or functions into a role that can be assigned to CRM users. Each role is associated with a set of privileges that determines the team or user's access to information within the company. Roles can be copied, modified, or created to model the requirements of the business. And users can be assigned more than one security role, and the total access rights for a user will be based upon the total of all rights for each role that they have been assigned. CRM out of the box includes 14 predefined roles, which we'll summarize in the next slide. As you can see, we have a number of roles here. We start off at the top, the CEO or business manager. There's also some vice president level roles. There's manager roles and there's individual worker roles. And this is designed to allow us to build a structure using business units where the CEO might be in a business unit at the very top of the tier, that individual managers might be in a middle tier of business units, and the managers and workers would be in the bottom tier of the structure. You can review the details of these through any implementation of CRM. Privileges define what a user may do. There's actually more than 580 different privileges predefined during setup when you install or deploy CRM. The complete list of the privileges is in the SDK, but basically privileges are built into CRM and cannot be added. Each role defines a set of privileges that can be assigned as part of that role. Within there are entity-related privileges. Each entity includes privileges for read, write, update, delete, and so on. On the other hand, non-entity related privileges are typically related to special tasks such as export to Excel or Word mail merge, and they just define whether or not a user may exercise that function or not. Here's a list of the entity privileges: create, read, write, delete, append, and append to, assign, share, and reparent. For more details about what each one of these privileges actually grants, check the CRM 2011 SDK. Access rights. Access rights determine the extent of a particular privilege. From entity access rights perspective, the access rights determine which records a privilege applies to based upon the ownership of the record, namely the user, and the business unit that the owner is assigned to. On non-entity access rights, it just determines if the role grants the privilege or not. Access rights. As you can see, there are 5 levels of access, from organizational down to none. Organizational access is also the equivalent of a yes for a non-entity based privilege, that yes, you have the right to do that. Basically, if you have organizational access to a particular right in an entity, it means that you have that right for all records within the organization, regardless of what business unit the user who owns it participates in. The next layer down would be parent-child, also known as DEEP from the programming side. This exposes to a user records in the user's business unit as well as all business units subordinate to the user's business unit. The access right of business unit allows you to work with the records that are owned by any user in your business unit. User access grants you the right to exercise this privilege on records that you own and no others. And then finally, none, which means that you have no access to that privilege for that type of record at all. In the case of a non-entity based privilege, none means no.